This is a short tutorial for everybody's favorite math problem, word problems. Okay, so we have a 5-step approach. Let's see what the 5 steps are. Step 1, you're going to read the problem for understanding. Make sure you know what the problem is asking you to find. Step 2 are let statements. We're going to set up some variables to represent the quantities that we're looking for. This is what translates from the real world into the math world so that we can solve the problems using math. Step 3 is we're going to write our algebraic statements that represent the problem. This comes from information that the problem gives you or known formulas that you need to solve the problem. Then step 4 is we're going to actually solve it. It's all set up so we find an answer in the math world. But we're not done yet because step 5 tells us that we have to interpret this answer, whatever we got, in the context of the original problem so that it makes sense as an answer in the real world. Okay, let's do an example. Here's the problem. First, step 1, we'll read it for understanding. Jimmy made a trip to the lake and back. On the trip there, he drove 75 kilometers per hour, and on the return trip, he went 60 kilometers per hour. How long did the trip there take if the return trip took 5 hours? The question we're really trying to answer here is how long did the trip there take? So let's write that down. We're looking for the time in hours of the trip to the lake. So we understand the problem and what we're trying to find. Read the problem as many times as you need to really understand it, because to move on before you understand the problem, very unlikely to get the right solution. Okay, so now step 2, we're going to write our let statements. We know that we want to find out the time, and the time could be any number, so that's our variable quantity. So we're going to let t equals time. You can let any letter be your variable. I'm using t for time. You could say x, but in this example I'm using t. Okay, so we don't have any letters to represent constants. All our constants in this problem are actually the numbers, so we'll just put them in step 3 when we get there, which is now. Step 3 is we're going to write some algebraic statements that represent this problem. Okay, well, let's try to understand how we can write an algebraic statement. This is a problem that a diagram sometimes is helpful. So let's draw a little diagram. He's starting, he's going to a place, the lake, and it's a rate and time and distance problem. So we know that the formula for rate and time and distance is that rate times time equal distance, so we can write that down so we have it for reference. And now specifically, we know that he drove 75 kilometers per hour on the way to the lake, so we can put that there. But he also had a return trip, so going the other way, he went 60 kilometers per hour. It is the same distance, whether he went to the lake or back from the lake. So if we look at our formula, rate times time equal distance, then we know that we just have to multiply by the time to get the distance. We're given that on the return trip he took 5 hours, so we can multiply that and we find that the entire distance is 300 kilometers. And now that same formula is going to hold for the trip out, so we can write that in with our variable times t hours equals 300 kilometers. And now when we use the equation that we want to solve, we can leave the units off and put them back in at the end. So our equation is 75 times t equals 300. That's what we want to solve. Step 4 lets us do that. We're solving it. 75t equals 300 solves to be t equals 4. But we're not done, because t equals 4 is just a number, and we need to put it back in context. So step 5 lets us do that. Interpret in context. The 4 means that it took him 4 hours. So we can write Jimmy's trip to the lake took 4 hours. Now there's more than one way to write that, but you should at least put the unit label on 4 hours if you're going to answer your question in context. So let's summarize what the steps are. Step 1 is read for understanding as many times as you have to. Step 2, write your let statements. What do your variables represent? Step 3 are going to be your equations or your inequalities, the things you're trying to solve. Step 4 is to solve it, and step 5 is to interpret it with units in context. And of course, you can draw diagrams whenever you need to help you understand the problem. I hope this was helpful. Thank you for watching.